Okay, it's 5 p.m., so I guess we should start. Okay, this talk is going to be about cheating. There's a lot of general stuff, some technical details, and basically a story of DayZ and how we got into it. I work in production on DayZ. I worked mostly in operations before, and I worked in mobile games as well. I've been focusing on game security for the last 2 years, and you can always find me on the interwebs without any problem, because my handles are mostly public. So let's start with the business of cheating. It's an important part of how to battle it, and you need to understand what's actually happening behind the scenes. There are a couple of disclaimers I would like to get out of the way. This talk only applies, or mostly applies, to always online multiplayer games, which is a big topic recently, especially with the rise of survival genre, competitive gaming, and MMOs. All of these information are based on my experience with DayZ and discussions with the people on the field. What it is, cheating is gaining an unfair advantage. If you break it down to different types, you can usually get it into those 4 categories, which is exploiting, game state manipulation, services, and automation. Exploiting, using in-game bugs, basically to gain an unfair advantage. So it's something that we leave behind, for the most part, as game developers, and people find it and use it. Game state manipulation, which is most of what this talk is about, is something that we consider the core cheating, where people gain advantage by using internal or external applications, libraries to manipulate the data, server data, or just network communication. Besides that, you can also meet services, which is what you see mostly with MMOs and competitive gaming, where people buy services to increase their matchmaking rating, and many different stuff, from leveling and gaining an advantage by gaining gold, or many other things. Automation, which is mostly about botting, and you might have seen there have been a lot of cases recently where even Blizzard has started battling botting in a large scale with the German company, Germany company, which has created a big business around botting really recently. Okay, history of cheating. We used to leave a lot of debug tools in games, Easter eggs, alternate modes, and secret content. You might remember a time where cheats looked like that, and it was really easy. Myself personally remember a really great time where Mortal Kombat was a game that I played with my brother, and we were really trying hard to get smoke in the game. I think it was the first one or the second one, and without the power of the internet, it was really hard just to randomize through that stuff. So there are a couple of things you need to keep in mind. Unhackable game is a myth, and cheats have evolved. It's a dedicated business. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. Who out of the audience have used cheats in the past? Okay. Have any of you cheated in a multiplayer game? Not enough. Have any of you bought a cheat, paid money for it? Okay. So let's talk about who they are. Creators of cheats behind the business are mostly programmers and people who have a technical skill to do that. Hackers and scripters, which are the terms used for it. There are also customers, cheaters, which are users, and I usually, from my experience, split them into multiple categories. Griefers, which are repeated offenders, and resellers, copycats, which are basically people who buy cheats and resell them later. How do they sell? Well, mostly through dedicated websites. There are a couple of examples on the slide: artificial aiming, perfect aim, and many more that you can find on the web. They do their advertising on forums and social media. For example, unknown cheaters, hacker forums, and other closed communities where you actually have to get an invite to get into it. Is it a legitimate business? From my experience, especially through last 3 months, a couple of them, A lot of the companies that have been making cheats available for DayZ have tried to do it as a legitimate business. They started a company, they do their taxes properly. It's a basically business that's making money and selling cheats to people through proper websites, proper services, with all the parts that are needed for that. There is a web presence, there is a business model to it. From the business models that have been available to DayZ and most other games, you'll see a subscription model, usually through a website, or standalone purchase of the application, where you get in contact with the person offering the application through IM, Skype, ICQ, IRC, VK, Facebook, forums, either private or public, so you need to get an invite, usually from a person who's already part of the forum or part of the group. Why do they do that? I'm going to talk about that a bit later. Also, what does it cost? It's actually really variable. I've seen cheats on DayZ cost a lot more and really almost nothing, especially from some of the resellers who buy a cheat and try to resell it back so they get the money they spent. Standalone purchase that I've seen on the DayZ has been ranging from $1 to $500. The $500 case was really interesting. It was a private cheat where somebody found a way to keep our executable in place and repack it with the same CRC and change a couple of functions that basically enabled him to use debug console. Subscription model can usually range on DayZ from 1 to 25, but I'm going to share a couple of slides where you'll see all the other games that are currently online and the cost of their cheats. So, as you can see, there are a couple of online division cheats at the moment available, a couple of CSGO cheats from really famous websites. And the subscription models, and you can see the difference, which is really large. Like for Division, it's $5 for a single month, and for CSGO, it's $18. So probably that functions properly. So what makes the difference between the sellers? Well, features, service, reliability, and communication. You can see that when I talked about the legitimate business. Those are people who are actually creating companies and making proper communication with the customer. When the cheat gets down and we disable it from the game or ban the license, they complain, and the person responsible for the website or the distributor actually gets a new cheat up online and keeps the subscription going from the person who bought it. So it's a key thing that they try to use to keep the money going to them. This is an example of DayZ cheat that was up and online a long time ago. But it's an interesting thing where you see all the overlays, ESPs, and basic features of many cheats that you see in DayZ even today. I also copied a couple of screenshots from a website where you can see features from CSGO, Division, Rainbow Six, and all ranges of games, mostly shooters in this case. But if it's visible, I'm going to read a couple of them, from auto-shoot to zero recoil, many things that basically enable the players to gain an unfair advantage. There's a funny thing to buying cheats. It's not so easy. When you compare public and private services which sell those cheats, there's a big difference. Why do they go private? They go private because it's really hard to get hands on the exploit they use, so they spread it only to a handful of people, usually 5, 10, 25, so you don't know about it, you don't notice it, and basically they keep it under wraps. When you see a public site, which is usually easy to find and easy to buy, that gets usually taken down quickly if you're vigilant, but we're going to talk about that later as well. They take a lot of precautions to limit leaks from these smaller groups or even public websites. They usually use hardware ID locks for always online cheats, which are basically applications which connect to a master server, authenticate themselves, and and keep the cheat under wraps. I've seen cases where we had to create fake citizen IDs from Russian communities or Chinese communities to buy the cheat to see actually the exploit that have been used. There have been Skype interviews from people that I had to hire from Russia and China, because they spoke the language, which we didn't have in the company at the time, to convince the person who's selling the cheat that we're the person that he needs to sell it to. I also have been through Facebook and VK account checks and personal harassment on the people that have been involved with those cheaters. So it's really, really hard to sometimes get your hands on that. Yet it really thrives. Like the revenue for some of the public sites goes up to 1.25 million a year in dollars. Public seller of cheat of single game, in this case DayZ, can go up to 40K a month. And private seller, usually smaller sellers with high value subscriptions, can go to up to 5K a month. Yeah, it's really hard. Okay, so cheats in DayZ. You might have seen many features in DayZ abused, and there are reasons for that. Bohemia as a company have always been developing their own technology, and our technology and engine has been peer-to-peer from the start. When DayZ started its development, and we've seen the uptake of cheats, which have been prevalent in the DayZ mod, we knew we had to do something. It actually hurt our player base really, really bad. The features that you see even now are ESP, which is a feature or system where you show or highlight objects in the game that are important. That means items that you need to pick up, players that are hiding somewhere, and many more. There are item and player magnets, basically remote execution of actions where people can gather lumber from kilometers away just because the object is available in memory. Remote damage, aimbots, speed hacks, and server crashes. Those are really important. I've seen many people who have found an exploit in our game, being in early access, where they found a way to crash the server itself and have distributed this cheat amongst many people, where they basically have gone through server to server and crashed it all over again and over again. So how do they work? Basically, cheaters are trying to find vulnerability vectors within the system, in this case, DayZ, or many other games that you might have seen. They use reverse engineering tools like IDA, OLIDebug, Wireshark to find more information on your game, and are building libraries or dedicated drivers and applications to basically hack or change values within your game. Where is it done? It happens on PC, it happens on consoles, it happens on mobile, so basically everywhere. I've seen cases on consoles that are really interesting. If you look at Diablo 3 on consoles, there are a lot of hacked items in the game. And when I was playing the game, I usually join a multiplayer game, and I see people with integer values on their items, basically ruining all the gameplay experience. In DayZ, we've seen all of it as well. If you break it down to categories of cheats, of how they do it, you can talk about client-side local manipulation, server-side active attacks, attacks on other players in peer-to-peer systems, which was a lot of the cases for us as well, hardware or software hacks, botting, automation, and exploiting. They usually combine all of those features within a single cheat or sold application, so they can offer a lot more value for the person. When you look at the features themselves that I mentioned before, some of them work basically on exploits, some of them work on automation, some of them work on memory hacking. For client-side local manipulation, there is a common base usually. You can split them into internal and external hacks, and most of the newbie hackers start with GitHub projects like Xenos and Cheat Engine. They are publicly available, you can always download them, and most people start with Cheat Engine anyways. For the server-side attacks, manipulation of transmitted data, way to go around server-side checks, and can be used outside of the client PC. We've seen cases where the web injection on our game have created 10,000 of subscriptions just because we didn't have a network encryption in place at the time. Why it works? It's mostly because of bugs and exploits, lack of encryption, lack of server-side authentication, lack of client-side authentication, or use of it. We still are in a world where we cannot run anything server-side. Everything server-side, sorry. It's usually genre-specific and design-specific. That's why I said that this talk mostly applies to always online multiplayer games, which is the case for DayZ. It's an interesting time because rise of competitive gaming and multiplayer games and even events. If you remember the DreamHack case where cheating was happening actually on stage, I think that for the future of cheating and how it's going to work, like especially competitive gaming and services like Twitch and all that are going to drive forward the development of anti-cheats, and are going to change the scale of how we do it. So how do you protect your game? In our case, we basically broke it down to a couple of things. We needed a standalone application protecting the game process. There are a couple of anti-cheats out there. For our case, it was Batfly. And we knew we had to use that. And why? Because our game is fast-paced FPS, and we have to do basically client-side checks. And as you know, everything can be hacked on client. And this was a good way to start for us, especially with an early technology that we had before, where the engine was peer-to-peer based, and there was only a handful of implemented features to basically help us in the fight with cheaters. Also, proper architecture, server-client. It's something that's talked about a lot, and you'll see more on that topic in the later slides. Network encryption, a big thing, especially when I mentioned the web inject. If you imagine that there is a guy that set up a website and offered DayZ cheats for $5 a month, and he got 10,000 subscribers in like first week, which is $50,000 just for a simple application where he abused our network code. Stats-based checks. We haven't implemented that yet in DayZ, but it's something that's becoming more common. When you look at the curve of player ability and you start gathering the data to actually analyze it, you'll see people who are on the end of the curve where they shouldn't be. For DayZ, I can imagine we're going to be collecting data on lethality of first shots and many more, where we can see people who are actually abusing some of the features like damage system within our engine. Important part of it is terms of service, basically banning licenses. You need to set it up in the first place so you can actually let the person who's buying your game know how the game should be used and why his license was closed, and then you're able to actually use, for example, in our case, the standalone application protecting the game, to check the data on the computer and basically scan it. In the best case, you probably need all of it together. The basic rules: anything on the client can and will be hacked. Server-side code is only as secure as the server. Keep that in mind. So where we are at with DayZ. Yes, we're using Batfly as our standalone application, curl the driver, which is protecting the game. We're trying to implement the proper architecture into the engine, and it's still currently work in progress. We have progressed heavily since the first release. We're in an ongoing effort to implement network encryption on a standard base, and we're still battling cheaters on all sides of the fence. We still haven't started gathering enough data that can be used for stat-based anti-cheats, but I'm hopeful that we'll get there really soon. So where do you start as a developer? You have a game out, and it's probably a multiplayer game, if you're here, hopefully. And you might have a competitive mode within the game, and you'll see your matchmaking going just haywire. You see your people in the game complaining about cheaters. You see people just like leaving your game altogether. Well, the first part should be you buying cheats. As I already said, it's not that easy. You'll see a lot of the cases that I mentioned before, from ID checks, fake identities. You need to gain reputation within private communities, private forums, get an invite, and basically just build your rep within the community. After that, of course, you reverse engineer them. You look what's actually happening and what exploit they are using and how you can fix that. Be proactive. Use the same tools they do. I already mentioned basic reverse engineering tools. You should have them in your company. Start building a solid base. That comes back to the server-client architecture that I mentioned before, network encryption. If you're using third-party engine or your own technology, there are always ways to improve. When you look at the cheats that are available for a game, always consider the features of cheats which harm your user base the most. In case of DayZ, it was, for example, the remote damage. If you can imagine a case where a player joins a server and kills all the people on that server with a single click, it's probably not a good place to be for a game. It is important to layer out your protection. There are a couple of high-level ideas that you need to keep in mind. It's prevention, detection, obfuscation, your banning strategy, and legal. Prevention in our case, when we thought about it, started with the standalone kernel driver, which was protecting the game, hiding the process, using kernel API on Windows to basically protect the game and check for hooks. It was proper architecture that we started implementing the game, and we tried to work with legal for use of scare tactics, site takedown, and text reports. When I mentioned it before that a lot of companies nowadays are actually starting to do it proper and clean, they aren't always doing that. Tax fraud is a thing, and people making that much money, you should be reporting them. And when they get in jail, they don't make any cheats. For detection, again, in our case, it was standalone kernel driver, bad lie. When you think about it on a kernel level driver, ring 0, there are many things that you can do with such an application to basically check the state of the computer, check the state of the game, or whatever the user is using at the time. I just listed a couple of options from strings to certificates, patterns, vector abuse, processes, memory. There's, of course, a lot more detailed technical information that we can talk about, but since it's like a 60-minute segment, hopefully we'll get through all of it. If there is a space after the end, you can always catch me and we can talk about it. One part of the detection is stat-based data and analysis. It's something that we haven't implemented yet, but I've seen it in other games. I already mentioned briefly how it works. You can always log stuff. For example, we have two-tier deployment system. We deploy on experimental servers, which is something that people can opt in on Steam, which is the most recent version of the game. And we have a stable servers, which contain the basically like 1 month release that we get to a place where we're confident that it should be available to all customers. So it's something that people have to actually choose to do. On experimental servers, we usually run extensive logging because people test their cheats beforehand. They want to get ahead of us and have something available for the next release as soon as it's possible. Of course, sanity checks. You can do that on the server side. You can do that basically on stats. You can do that on anything. And you should use it. Obfuscation, it's a big part of it. You should change your code often so that finding offsets is really hard, keeping up the pace with the developers is really hard. And in our case of our kernel driver, change the code of the kernel driver as well, remove parts of it, add parts to it, basically run it in VM if possible. So it's really hard to reverse engineer all your data, executables, binaries. Use of binary and string obfuscation. It's something that everybody should be using it. Always think about the overhead and performance cost and try it out first. Use of VMs, as I already have previously said. It's something that we use for our kernel driver. Ban waves. Why do we use ban waves? Because it's really hard for a person to find out the cause of the ban happening. If you use the cheat or a feature or a thing or a vector of abuse that caused the ban, if it's not happening straight after it, he doesn't know, and he basically has to go through the whole application again and test all over. Random ban times, it's something that we really like to use. We usually ban from 10 to 30, 3 hours, it depends. It's something that helps us keep people on their toes because they never know what's actually happening. A good advice there, always waste their time. Because the more time they waste, less they sell. Banning strategy. Always consider time-based bans. There's a thing and a discussion I had recently about the rehabilitation of cheaters and how to go about it. You see it in many other games from League of Legends and how to basically work with the license. And the cheater himself when he has actually gathered something on the account and is in risk of losing something. Consider permanent bans. It has to happen at some point. If somebody is a repeated offender, he happens to cheat all the fucking time, it's a thing that should happen, and I've seen so many griefers and so many vandals within the game that just repeatedly hurt people and your user base by creating really awful cheats. And I'm going to mention a couple of stories. I remember we had, there is a really interesting weather simulation within our game, and our trees basically move based on the weather, and there is a really nice thing around it. But they were able to find a way to change the weather on a secondary client, and they were basically distributing it throughout the server, where it ended up being almost like a tornado, and there was nothing visible on the server. You just had like insane amount of noise on the screen for all the people connected to a server. Consider use of hardware ID bans, especially for the griefers. It's an interesting thing because I've been, me personally, harassed by cheaters because we closed down their businesses, we attacked their fund they are having, or whatever it is, and they found me and actually sent me death threats and just like, I even remember a story that happened actually last year where a person started a Kickstarter to attend my GDC presentation and basically meet me in person. He asked for 10K. It's already, yeah? Did he get it? No, he gathered like $300. So he didn't get in, hopefully. If Fonzie is here, please speak up. Ban waves, which is a really thing that I already explained before, and always be mindful of false positives. Like it will happen, and you will have to take it into account. You have to answer every ticket and have the level of transparency that's needed. I'm going to share some interesting numbers. The number of bans usually floats around 1 to 2% of sold licenses. In our case, it's 1.41, and it's something that, from what I talk to other developers, usually ranges within the number, but there might be cases or edge cases where that doesn't actually apply. Look at your repeated offense rate, if possible. We try to gather as much data as we can, and in our case, the repeated offense rate at the moment is at 72%. If you look at the public data around VAC, their VAC bans, basically on Steam accounts, go up to 1.5% and flown around that number. Banning legal and community. So who needs to get involved? Everybody. Legal, production, dedicated staff, programmers, build engineers, design, cheaters. For the laws of legal, they should be mindful of the thing that I mentioned before, which is tax fraud. It's really effective, and you should use it. They should be also mindful of protection of people involved in battling cheating. You have seen probably cases like president of Sony Online Entertainment, and now Daybreak, where they've been under constant attack by Lizard Squad. Try to not to attract that much attention. Like it's going to happen at one point where you close down a business that's like 1.5 million strong. That person is going to be angry and is going to retaliate. Keep your personal information under wraps. I've been in a situation where all my personal information has been posted on Shiki forums, and I received 720 calls on 24th of December. It's not fun. Take down sites. That's something basic that probably some of you already do. People distribute their stuff through websites, through forums, through basically digital distribution. You can always use scare tactics through legal notices, contact the hosting services to take down the servers, and DMCA it. For the production, keep your priorities straight. Be mindful of what is hurting your user base, be transparent, work with everybody involved. I'm going to mention all the other roles as well, but you have to understand you need to keep contact and keep your priorities straight. It's going to change every day. It's a never-ending battle. of cat and mouse, where you just chase the cheaters around, and there always are going to be cheaters. I don't think we ever got our numbers to 0, so just remember that. Dedicated staff. We actually had to hire a lot of dedicated staff for cheating. As I already mentioned, start buying cheats. Like, that's the first thing, first task the guy should get. And he should start being a part of the cheating world. He should get a rep, he should create applications, he should start joining forums, he should start being friends with those people. Create fake identities, use VPNs, hosted servers, physically separate network. That's really important. I've seen a lot of malware being parts of cheats, and they've been used to basically gather information within the company and abuse their information publicly. Start building the reputation as soon as possible. It's going to take a lot of time. Roles. For programmers, look at the architecture and changes needed. Always make things prioritized properly. There is server-side validation, network encryption, client-side architecture. There's a lot of things to do, and you need to keep that in mind. For build engineers, always encrypt your data, obfuscate where you can, remove debug functions. Remember that. Don't leave anything in your code you don't want to get cheaters their hands on. Don't lose the source. It's something that we had a problem with. You might have seen in the communication that has been out, Bohemia Interactive has actually been hacked it was last year, where a source was actually leaked. And that helped cheaters a lot. It's not fun when they have access to their source code. You see a lot of pirated servers spinning up. You see basically abuse of functions you didn't even know existed. Codebase of Bohemia is about 2.5 million, and some of the features are really hidden. It's about 16 years of technology, and things change really quickly. For designers, think about why people cheat. Like, look at the data you have available when you start gathering it, when they start cheating, how they cheat, what actually happens, how it affects your user base, how you can change the system's design to actually apply that to your game. Look at the data and think about how you can rehabilitate them. We've tried many things with DayZ. One of the things we tried is, for example, cheater-only servers. Like, there are alternate ways of basically closing the game to person who's doing that. I heard removing of features recently, which we haven't tried, but it might be interesting. Besides that, cheating servers and alternate punishments are really, really fun. Like, I've seen a case where Guild Wars 2 used, I think, like a Reaper. So they basically came to you and killed you instantly whenever you cheated. There was an interesting thing that happened not that long ago. As I mentioned, the personal harassment. Besides that, there also have been harassment to my colleagues, people around me, and harassment to our company. It's one of the vectors that everybody should keep in their mind. When you're using server-client architecture, there's a master server, there's authentication happening, validation of the game data, validation of the game state, or even cross-validation throughout clients, so where client on the other side actually confirms the information that on the simulation of the other client. When we did that and implemented a lot of those features, we started being attacked. And our basically central infrastructure was under attack by DDoS attacks, and they were really large. We got into, I think, top 25 in Europe. It was an attack that was large as 78 gigabytes a second and 35 million packets a second. So keep everybody in place. Operations is a big part of that. It's a thing that you need to keep in mind. Even when you have a perfect system, you can probably get offline really quickly. What else you can do? I've seen many companies in situations where they tried many different things. One of the things we tried as well is create a feedback loop. Of course, we have lines of communication for our customers where they can report cheaters, but it's really hard to sort through that stuff. Like, the number of people you need to do that is really, really high, especially for user base that we have at the moment. try to automate as much as you can for most of those reports. We also created a competition for people willing to share security flaws. We offer money for cheaters who are actually reporting that stuff to us, and we try to offset the income they actually get for using those cheats. So at the moment, I think it's around $500. As I said before, don't retaliate. Try not to make it personal. I've seen many cases when these people and griefers and vandals have been really nasty to all the people in the company. So there are a couple of things I want to talk about and stories I wanted to share from DayZ. When you look at where we were those 3 years ago, since it was a long time ago that we released our early access, we came out after a short time, and we've been battling cheating ever since. It's an ongoing process that takes a lot of energy and a lot of people, as you might have seen from the slides where I mentioned the people who are actually involved with that and are still involved with that. And we're growing, and the cheating threat is not really going anywhere. We have been in situations where it was really low, where we played it really right, because when it becomes really unprofitable for the people who are creating the cheats to do that on your game, they will move somewhere where the market is better. In our case, it was CSGO and many other games. They want to make money. They don't care about the game. On the other side, the griefers, they usually care about the game. Some of them turn their passion into toxicity and join the communities, try to make it as hard for you as possible. There was a situation that I mentioned before where we had to hire actually snitches in Russia and China, and it was really hard for us to get those people on board. Some of them are really hard to convince, and it was even hard to get those cheats. Some of those things actually took weeks, and we have been exposed to that, and you can see the subscriber base of the cheat growing while you cannot do anything. And there's an interesting thing that when we use the kernel driver, you can always basically be preemptive. When you identify the guys who are creating those cheats, you can wait with the bandwidth and basically analyze the data before it actually happens. I've seen people actually being so paranoid when creating cheats where they are removing Visual Studios from their game because they think we're actually detecting them, where they are removing applications and just keeping everything on a separate physical network where they create that and keep it offline until they have something tangible. There have been a lot of cases, besides the Blizzard one, DreamHack one, where this has become a really big topic. As I already said, the competitive gaming is going to be a thing that's driving the future, and I'm hopeful to see it evolve really quickly. I gave this similar talk on GDC Europe last year, and it was interesting to see the rise of the security at GDC 2016. There have been 6 security talks, I think, this time around, and I'm really happy the discussion is starting. Have any of you attended the other security talks? Nobody? I don't see any hands. So, I'm really interested in sharing all those experiences with you, and I would like to hear what you have to share so we can start the discussion and keep it open. Feedback is really important. Can I ask people to come around and start asking questions? Because I'm hopeful we can start talking about more technical details, about things that people are interested in.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm Sebastian. I work at EA. So first of all, thank you for sharing. So I know how difficult it is to talk about security because nobody wants to talk about it, to not showing the flaws. I have 20 million things I would like to discuss, but I'm going to try to keep it short to a couple of questions. So you mentioned hiring a red team. Do you have a stable red team? And if you do, what's the most effective way that you've found working with them?
Can you repeat the question one more time? I'm not sure I heard properly.
Yeah. So you mentioned hiring cheaters or paying them for getting stuff. So do you have a stable, higher red team? And so what is the most effective way that you found to use them? That's the first one. Do you want me to give you a second question? Or?
I can answer the first one, and we can continue to the second one. So with the people I've been talking to, I have a lot of cheaters within my secondary Skype, and I've tried to be friends with some of them. Some of my colleagues have tried that. It doesn't really work out for the most part, but sometimes it's worth it. But I've seen it abused a lot, which is where it comes back to the things that I mentioned, where you need to keep it as low as possible. I know that it's really hard to share some of the information, as I already said. Like, I'm trying to keep it as usable as possible. Yeah, I think at some point where you're running out of options, it's something that you need to try. And we have a dedicated staff to do that, to keep the rep within the forums, within the private communities, and keep the talk going. We had people who were asking for money to give us the information. We tried it sometimes. Most of the time it didn't work. It was a scam. So it's something that is worth trying, for sure.
Okay. We can talk afterwards, for sure. Related to the hardware ID bans, are you banning consoles from the game? And if you do, how do you deal with second-hand sales? So do you have like a DK policy in saying after I ban a console 60 days after, I whitelist it again, so people that buy on the second-hand market don't have a problem? We
don't have a console market yet, so it's something that we're going to consider when we release. Currently, it's only PC market. Although there was one funny story that happened recently. We have like an ongoing thing with one of the websites which creates sheets for DayZ, and the guy has been really adamant, and it almost got personal at some point. How would I say that in a most legal way possible? Well, he started distributing cheats for CSGO, and one of the vectors of identification that we used were certificates. The driver used the same certificate, and we were basically banning for CSGO cheats that people kept running while playing DayZ, even though they weren't cheating. It's a similar situation, at least I see the lines there, where they did really break the terms of service that we set up. They agreed to that, and we still banned them, but they haven't actually cheated. And it's a really like gray line where you have to think about the outcome. Like, I know there have been so many things that happened recently. For example, Steam refunds. Because of the 2-hour gameplay time, a lot of our cheat makers basically use that refund policy to create those cheats. They start creating the cheat, create a new account, spend like one and a half hour to create a cheat, keep getting banned, then they refund, and do that again without spending actually our money. And on the console market, I'm really not sure what's going to happen. Like, we're still going to see.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name's James. Thanks for the talk. So one of the things that we did in our game was we set up a honeypot, which was a really exploitable, easy system. And we caught a lot of hackers and cheaters that way. And we left it open under the premise that as we kept catching these people using that really simple exploit, we just kept banning them and finding their cheats and what they were using. Do you guys think that's a useful technique, or do you think it's better to just close up that honeypot?
Can you repeat that one more time? I'm not sure I understood everything out of its complexity.
Oh, yeah. So sometimes we would find a cheat on something that was exploitable, and we would just leave that. And so other cheats would come out, and they would keep using that same exploit. And then every time they did, we'd go, oh, that guy's cheating. And we'd just find more and more cheats and hacks that way. Is that something that you think is effective, or is probably something we shouldn't be doing?
It helped us. Like, it depends. Like, when you have a data on repeated offense rate that as high as us, if it's low, it's probably a viable an option. It comes back to the ban waves, where basically we left a couple of exploit holes open for a while just to gather the people using them, because we knew that that's out there, and it worked for us. But it's probably a lot more effective with lower repeated offense rate. It's something that I would use for sure.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is, I'm over here. Hi, my name
Sorry.
is Mike, that's okay. My name is Michael Suras, I'm the community manager and voice actor for Insurgency, and we are also an online multiplayer game, and we're soon going to be integrating a competitive mode into our games, so anti-cheat is something that it's very important to us at this point in our game's life cycle. So I have two questions. The first question is, do you recommend any specific external anti-cheats? Remember there was one that you had mentioned that you use in DayZ, and the second question is, do you recommend, are there any resources online of maybe like databases of popular cheating sites or places where developers who are concerned about security and cheating get together and share this sort of information?
It's something that I would like to start, for sure. I've been thinking even for this GDC to start something like a security workshop for different platforms. But it is a lot of content to create, so it's still an ongoing thing. And I would love to see some developer cooperation in that regard, and even anti-cheat cooperation, because it's a big thing and it's going to grow bigger, and the business is not stopping anywhere. So I don't have any databases or websites. It's something that we created internally that I'm willing to share for sure. It's something that hopefully every developer gets their hands on. But of course, it has to be in a private conversation somewhere. It's not something that I want to share with the world in general.
Right, of course. And as far as an external cheat client, were there any that you might recommend yourself?
There are a lot of options out there. We even talked about that with guys from Easy Anti-Cheat in the beginning. BattleEye for us has worked perfectly. I know about Easy Anti-Cheat. I know about a couple of other guys that are doing that. But since like kernel driver anti-cheats are not that common, there are only a couple of competitors.
Thank you.
Were there any legal considerations to using kernel drivers, and did it create any bad PR in the community saying your game is like malware installing kernel drivers?
Can you speak to the microphone, please?
Were there any legal considerations to using kernel drivers, and did it create any bad PR in the community saying that your game is like malware installing kernel drivers?
Of course, you need to be aware of that and consult legal, because in different countries, different places, there are a lot of details that you need to be aware of. Most of it we covered in terms of service, and hopefully it won't blow up on us.
Thank you for your pitch. I was wondering about some developers have come with creative ways of dealing with the cheaters. Many of them have released their own copy of the game with some cheat that the users may use. But then again, they will put some Easter egg or some error that lets them identify that the copy is a cheated one. Do you think that is an effective way of discouraging the cheating, or that would be more, that would be the contrary, that will encourage the users to get cheated copies?
I'm not sure if I understand correctly. Let me just rephrase that. Do you mean that when a person cheats, he's tagged and it's visible for the other players that person is actually cheating?
Some games do that.
From the experiences I've shared with other developers, I don't think that really helps. Like it really basically didn't do anything and created a bad environment for most players.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I wanted to spend a lot more time on questions. Is there anybody else who wants to ask a question? I cannot share too much information, but hopefully I'll be able to answer them.
Sorry, I come for one more. So bots is an issue that we all deal with. One of the things that the challenges that I found in terms of legal and bots is that usually we need to have 100% proof that something, that an account is a bot. Otherwise, if we get sued, we don't have proof enough for the judge to determine so to win the case. So machine learning is something that we're using a lot in terms of detection for bots and that kind of stuff. And usually we have percentages of what is the probability of an account being a bot. Even though we see the activity that is a bot, so the activity is within human parameters, but we know it's a bot. But we cannot take any legal action against that, or we cannot ban because otherwise we will lose a case. Have you experienced this kind of stuff in DayZ?
We don't have any botting in DayZ because there is no really resource gathering to speak of in that case where people are automating that stuff. But it's something that we'll probably battle in other games. And I'm still really not sure how we're going to handle that. Botting is something that I've only spoken about in private conversations with other developers. I have no personal experience with that yet. Sorry.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Do you think that preventing cheaters can be reconciled with modding and open source game code? Often the techniques required to promote modding, it seems to me, might be conflicting with this. What do you reckon about that?
Yes, it's really conflicting. It's something that we battle ourselves. DayZ and Bohemia culture is all about modding. Those games basically are based around mods and the user-generated content. Even DayZ was a mod before. So yes, it's something that we had a really huge problem with because we basically keep our data unpackable and for people to actually see those scripts, how the game is made, how it works, so they can actually create their own mods. And we've been battling that ever since. The thing is, we've rewritten a large part of DayZ already. Some of it is out there, some of it is internal now. And we're trying, especially the things that I mentioned in the presentation, where we're trying as much as we can to keep simulation server-side. Also to use all those sanity checks and everything that we can in our, that's basically based around the architecture of the game and keep it open at the same time. And hopefully we're going to prevail at some point. But yeah, those are really conflicting.
Hello. My question is basically around Steam refunds and how they have affected the way cheats behave in your game. So basically, with Steam refunds, do they increase or decrease the cheating in your game?
From the data I have on our game, it has increased the amount of developers that are creating cheats for DayZ, and it also created a lot more. It basically increased the rate of repeated offense by a huge amount, really huge.
And how do you capture the repeating offense? Is it the same, imagine a Steam account and it buys DayZ, they cheat and they refund. Can they buy again DayZ and keep cheating again? Or how does it work?
There is one option to try for all the developers. I know Valve has been implementing that recently. I'm pretty sure it's in the documentation. There is a game ban option where you can basically ban the license of the game on Steam itself. And it's an API call that you can use. And it's a great way, basically when a repeated offender cheats over and over and over, and we'll see that pattern happening there, we'll use a game ban on the license. And it's something that we're still implementing, by the way. And hopefully that will basically return the numbers where they were before. And we'll be able to close down the licenses which are abusing the refund mechanic to either create the cheats or use them.
And are there any other, what changes would you make to the refund system so that it decreases the value of the attack of cheaters? For example, if someone has a back ban, maybe they cannot refund any game anymore, or losing privileges or something else?
We talked about that quite a bit. We haven't come to any better conclusion. Like, the system has to be simple, to be effective and automated, and everything else just becomes a hog and needs a lot more people and human interaction. So I'm just confident that the things that I've already talked about the game ban on the license, is going to help to battle that. I don't think any changes are going to happen anytime soon, and there's better ways around that, probably.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions?
Hi, can I just ask, when your details got released to the public, how you went about solving that? Because one of the things about being directors in New Zealand is that your personal details are public, because that's a law in New Zealand. So how did you deal with that?
I don't even know, really. Like, I think I've been pretty cautious. They still were able to dox me and get all the information on myself out. And I've been under attack ever since. So even when I made it as hard as possible, after consulting the people who have a lot more information on that, it didn't help. So if they want, they will get that information. Any other questions? I really like the interaction we're having. It's something that hopefully will continue. And as I already answered those questions before, if you want more information, just try to contact me, because I have very limited amount of what I can share publicly, as I'm being recorded. And hopefully that conversation will continue.
So I'm interested in what you think the blurred lines between ethics and security is. So in our game we have matchmaking, and you have to go through matchmaking in order to join to a game. And one thing we do with repeat offenders is we add 5 minutes to their match times. And so it's a little bit invisible, but what that means is that they get away with it for a while, but each time we add 5 minutes, it extends that playtime. Mm-hmm. And so eventually we watch them and they get over 2 hours, and then we go straight for the ban, and then they can't refund.
Interesting.
What is your ethics on that? Like, do you think that's a good thing to do, or do you think we're being evil? Because we're not sure, and we're just interested to see what other developers think.
I don't think they played ethically, so neither should we, I guess.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, any other questions? I really like what's happening here, so hopefully there will be people who want to know more.
I don't really have a question so much as a statement to potentially help you with some questions that you've received. So I'm an Xbox Live operations manager, and this is the realm that I live in. And something that you had been asked was about a device ban, a device suspension, and how do you deal with that, including false positives. So for instance, with Xbox, what happens is we'll have other companies that will say, hey, we need these users off of our service. Now, they can ban through their game if they choose to. But if this is somebody who's cheating on the service and it's impacting the community, you can send that to Xbox, and they can take care of the device for you. Mm-hmm. Those people will come in, they'll ask, hey, what happened? We can handle it. We'll handle it with the customer, and we can even reach out to you and help you with that as well. Another thing for the secondhand market, there is a public website that you can go to see if your device is banned. So if you're going to buy something off of eBay and you're like, hey, is this console suspended? Because that's usually what these people do. They'll do something stupid, they'll get their device banned, and then they turn around and sell it, or they take it to GameStop. Poor GameStop, they deal with this all the time, and then they have to sell this to a customer who is unknowing of, they're just buying a console secondhand. They just want to play your game, that's all that they want to do. And so we encourage them to go to that website and check it. And then another question that you got was about legal aspects. So for instance, however you write your terms of use, your terms of service, you can defend yourself, definitely get legal advice on that, on how you can go to court and defend yourself over that, because how you write that, your lawyers can help you with that and fight that in court. And then the question that you had also about the, what do you do if you get doxxed, and you're getting swatted? What do you do with that? That's a terrifying thing when you're sitting there in your house and you've got cops coming in, beating down the door, right? You're just sitting there eating pizza, watching TV, whatever, or streaming, because that has happened to some people who stream on Twitch. And I believe it's Crash Overdrive. you can contact them and they can help you with legal, how you can get law in and help you fight this and combat this, because this is a growing problem. It's even in the courts right now here in the US as far as making that a felony. So anyways, I just wanted to, and when you come to console, you and I definitely need to talk, because I would love to help you out.
We sure will. Like, I've had the really great option that after my last presentation, I was contacted by guys from Riot, and we talked quite a bit about the topic. And even when the whole thing started, I contacted guys because I really think like they have a lot more experience than me with the topic of personal harassment and DDoS attacks and a lot more. And I was really glad that they got me in contact with legal in Riot, where the guys actually explained a lot of the stuff to me, gave me the contacts, which really helped. And there's actually a couple of investigations ongoing into the cases that have happened over the last couple of months. And it looks like it's going to progress somewhere, so I'm hopeful. Okay, any other questions? Or are we over? Okay, so it's like 6. We can probably start the private conversations now. I really thank you for coming and sharing the questions and opening the conversation. If you can rate my presentation, I would be really, really glad. And feedback is really important. I'm going to leave my contacts with anybody who wants to talk. Either share the information on the databases we have internally, or anything that's going to happen, or on the security workshop that I would like to prepare for the next GDC. Thanks, guys.